All right, you're almost done. Welcome back to the virtual classroom once again in Comp 3077. This is our final video installment for the YouTube virtual playlist classroom for our video delivery for this course. All of us as professors, including myself, of course, I'm in the video this time around. I wanted to be in the video for this final video with my Fanshawe shirt on to say goodbye to you guys and thank you for engaging in this type of delivery. Step-by-step video delivery doesn't always work, especially when it's more of a concept, theoretical-based type of topic. But for computer applications, students have always really liked the way this has helped them get through the cases and help them learn the material. And we are now at the final stretch doing our final test in week 14. So that's what this video is about. This is your week 14 test prep video. Definitely one you're going to want to watch, and it's not going to be a long one. And let's talk about the test. Yes, this is a required video. Your test will be taken in class in week 14. It's worth 25% of your mark. It's a two-part test. I'm going to talk about that in a second. And it will be taken in class. We don't have a custom scheduled test in Comp 3077. Other courses, lots of other courses do, off into exam week, because all of us as professors, particularly me as the course master, I never felt super comfortable having all these proctors in there that might not be comfortable in a computer lab and handling a technology situation if one were to arise, even though they very rarely ever do. So you will take your test in your final class in week 14 in your final lab, the 2-hour class, and you should also attend the class before that 1-hour lecture before your lab, because that's where your professor sets you all up for the test. You need to be there, and that way you can go into the lab and get started and be done, and you'll be done with this course. So that's what we're talking about in this video. It's going to be a quick one, as I mentioned. You're going to refer to the skills list in FOL for week 14. You definitely want to do that, and that carries a list of the big ones that carry the most weight. And then you're also going to want to be prepared for this basic stuff, and I'm specifically mentioning some things in here that aren't in the list in FOL just to benefit the people that are watching the videos. And it's not like these are skills you'd have to brush up on for sure, but the test does cover everything. Anything is fair game. But these are a few more that definitely contribute to the overall points on the case portion of test 2, which leads me to my next point. This is a two-part test. You will have a case just like you did for test 1, and it will be worth the same as it was for test 1. You will have to complete a cumulative capstone case, as the publishers call them, that takes a collection of skills from a bunch of different cases and puts them into one. A little bit longer. This particular case, unlike the first one, we are using the version of the case that gives you the direct references and gives you a little more guidance for each step, just so you're not slowed down by that at any point during the case. That portion of it is worth 20%, and that is the portion you will start with. You'll start with the case portion. A lot of students in this class don't make it past the first portion. This is because they're not prepared. I want to see this number getting lower and lower every semester. All you have to do is sit down and go through this stuff a little bit. So here's what I would do, and then I'm going to give you a quick demonstration on part 2. And as I'm giving you some study tips for part 1, which is the case portion, which is worth 20%, I'm going to give you some breadcrumbs as I'm going through here. So pay attention, because I'm going to throw some freebies in. We're going to start by going over to FOL content. And in FOL content in week 14, you'll see if you just scroll down to the bottom of the content, you'll have some information on the final test. And you definitely want to start here. And what I would do, and I'm not going to oversell this, it's just go through, start. Yes, you need to know everything, okay, that we've covered, and anything is fair game. I'm not going to give you an exact, precise list of everything that's on there, even though I'm doing pretty darn close to that by what I've done at the beginning of this presentation with this list here, combined with this list here that you see in FOL content. You're going to be pretty set if you're comfortable with all these concepts. So what I've done here in week 14, you should read through all this. I'm not going to read through it with you in the video, is I've given you a list down here after the, what is that, the 5th or 6th bullet. And each list is accompanied by a little item in parentheses that indicates which week this was covered. So not only am I telling you what's going to be on it, I'm also telling you where you can go back and review it. So anytime you're going through some of these cases, and those are the cases I would focus on, is the cases since week 7, I would start flipping through the cases. And as soon as you see something and you don't remember which menu it's on, which tab it's on, I would go back and take a look at it. You can go back through the videos if you want and take the quizzes, But I would start by doing that with this primary list here, because this carries the most weight. So all of these things are going to be on there carrying the most weight. And then, of course, around that, there's going to be your basic stuff as well. Take note that there is going to be a solver on there. And I do have a little extra note on there on one of the things you're going to have to do with the solver that we didn't do on the case. It was on the quizzes, but it wasn't on the case. And I'm going to actually demo that in a second here. And you'll also notice that I referred to if-style functions. So what if analysis type of functions, which we did nested if for sure. And then we had other functions that were involved in that, particularly and or that were used as part of a nested if. And now I'm going to throw out my first breadcrumb, because you have had a lot of if functions across various SAM cases. And then you had a situation where you had an if function that involved multiple questions. And with the multiple questions you wanted to ask in the scenario, you could use and or. I'm going to literally show you the step on the test, so everybody who watches this video gets this breadcrumb. This is a step on the test, and you'll notice it never has you go in and create an if function after you create the and function. All you have to do is create the and function. And this was taught by your professors and also in my videos, that the and function will work and stand alone, just like or would, on its own, and ask questions and provide results. And in the particular step that you have that deals with if analysis, if functions in this final test case, all you have to do is the and you're good to go. So I'm leaving this on the screen for one more second. Now I'm going to switch back. So don't be confused by that when you get there, that I didn't actually go to the extent of asking you to do if. You've done quite a bit of it, and this is just another version of that on the final test case. The rest of these, when you go back and you look at the examples we had in the videos, in the cases that had those steps, the steps that include these concepts and skills on the final test are going to very closely resemble those steps we did on the cases, including that stuff we had in the week 11 case. We did 2 variable data tables, we did scenarios, we did solver. You will do a solver model on the case, and I'll pull up that file. You'll remember you had this solver model that you created, and you had to be very careful about the constraints and everything. I'm going to do breadcrumb number 2 now. So these are 2 gimmies I'm giving you for the final test. I just showed you number 8 on the final test case as a step, and now I'm also showing you another one. They have you do everything we did exactly the way we did it in the case. I'm not going to show you the step in the solver. I'm not going to go further in there, but they have you do it just like we did in the case. And then they say, okay, now I want you to go back to the solver. And you'll notice sitting anywhere in this worksheet where we have that solver model set up, I just go to solver and it's there. Doesn't matter where I'm sitting. And they want you to run the solver again, run it again, which means solve. But this time around, when you do it, they want you to make an answer report. So all you have to do is highlight answer, click OK, and then you'll notice that it generates a new worksheet, and it doesn't say to rename it or move it anywhere, and that worksheet will be part of your points. And that's one thing that we never got to do as part of our solver. So that's going to be an additional step on there. And then once you're done with all these steps in the first part, which is worth 20%, you're going to get to a part 2. So for part 2 here, I've taken my face in video out of the corner because I don't want it to mess with my demonstration of how part 2 works. And what part 2 is going to be for the students that make it to part 2 is an additional 5%. So this test in total is worth 25%. The case portion of the test, which is just like how we did it with test 1, is a capstone case that involves questions from a bunch of different cases, and it's a collection of different stuff you've learned since week 7, and it's worth 20%, just like the first one. But a lot of students, if you guys haven't been following along with the cases, I cannot urge you enough to go back and check menus and just try and make sure you're fresh going in. Of course, this test is open book. It's 100% open book, which is something I didn't mention at the beginning, but I'll add a note there. But that's not going to save you if you don't know where anything is. Part of the test, as always, is to show your proficiency in terms of how well, not just how well, but how quickly you can get this done. And that's why these tests are timed. So if you don't make it to part 2, don't freak out. It's 5%. It's not going to destroy your entire mark in the class. But if you do make it to part 2, this is what it looks like. It is an MOS simulation. And in that sense, it will give you a feeling of what it would be like if you went to get MOS tested after successfully completing this course. So when you open it up, it'll open it up just like this, just like mine did. And you're given a total of a half an hour to complete it. If your test time has already run down to the point where you only have 10 minutes left, you just go into it for 10 minutes, get as many steps done as you can, and get the points, because any points are better than no points for it, right? So the reason I wanted to include it in the test prep video is because it's going to help you enormously if you make it this far to know how it works ahead of time. Okay, number one thing that everybody's going to want to ask me about, and I'm not going to address it because you should have watched the test prep video. Here is a step. Now this looks kind of like the quiz, but it really isn't. This is given to you in modules that do have steps like the quizzes, but the difference is if you do something wrong, it doesn't tell you did it wrong, it just won't put it in. So here's a really simple step. As part of this module, you work part-time at a student success, you will edit and format an Excel workbook. Okay, good. All right, so this is another thing I wanted to make a note on. The very beginning of each module, all it does is tell you what you're doing. And then you have to go to the steps. So you can either hit next or you can go to the step itself, because the first thing that comes up at the beginning of each module is just giving you a short description of what you're doing within this module. You cannot move forward from this module, including these 6 steps in the module, unless you choose to submit that module, which you can do if you've done nothing in it, just to see if you can get some points in the next module. I don't know why you would do that. It starts with the least difficult to the most difficult. So this first step here, which is do a sum function in B20, and you could use auto sum, you could type it in. Let's say I put it in and I put it in wrong. Okay, so let's say I put in B9 to B18, and I had bad characters in there, whatever it may be. This is only one cell off, but when I hit enter, nothing happens. See that? And then everybody's like, whoa, what's going on? This thing doesn't work. It just doesn't. If it's not allowing you to input something, or it's not allowing you to edit something or format something, and you think you're doing it right, you're not. Okay, that's the main message in my first demonstration here for part 2 of the test. If you do it right, and whether you do it auto sum or type it in, I'd rather just do it auto sum, frankly. It'll be faster and it'll probably pick up the right range, which it does, and you hit enter, it puts it in for you. It's because you did it correct. If it's not putting it in, it's not because there's something wrong with the system, or the visual card isn't working, and it's like the visuals aren't coming through, or there's some kind of connection issue. It's because you're not doing it right. So what you do is you go into the first module, you get as much done as you can. If you try something 3 or 4 times and it's not working, just hit submit and go to the next module. But get all these steps done. So I've done that step there, and it doesn't tell me I've done it. I just know that when I did it, something went in. And at that point, it says in B22, I'm on the cash worksheet, enter a formula using relative that finds the difference between the total income in cell B6 and total expenses in cell B20. So this is obviously income minus expenses. So we're going to go to B22. We're going to type equals, and the income's in B6. So I'm going to do it in the other way around, just to see what happens. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go minus the income, which is up in B6 here. And I'm going to hit enter, and nothing's going to happen because it's wrong. However, if I went here, and I don't have to click on it, you can go, it worked. And it worked because I input the correct formula. So that is the biggest thing that gets students' heads spinning when they start part 2, if they're in fact doing these steps wrong, because it doesn't say incorrect, and it doesn't take away however many times you can get it incorrect, like a SAM quiz does. This is the MOS simulation. You have this much time, and with that much time, you get what you can done. But as I said, if you've come to a point in the test, you only get 2 total hours, for the test. If you've run it down to nothing, and you only have 10 minutes left, it's actually an hour and 50 minutes. It's not 2 hours total. Let's say you only have 5 minutes left. You're not going to be able to take it for a full half an hour. But in that 5 minutes, you might be able to get 2 or 3 steps right and get some points. So once you either finish all of the things in a module, which again, they don't go shady or anything. You just have to go through each one and do it. Or you've tried all the things in the module and you can't get any further. You will definitely get through module 1. Then you hit submit. And I think once you do, I'm going to try and do them all. I'm going to pause the video for a second here. All right, so I've gone ahead and I've done all 6 steps in the budgeting tips module just to make sure that it doesn't, and it is what I thought. Even after you do all 6, it's not going to prompt you to submit or submit it for you, because then it would almost like it'd be telling you you did them all correctly. I mean, you're to assume you did them correctly because it actually let you do it. But I have completed all 6 of them now. I didn't do them all while I was recording the video. And then at that point, you would hit submit and you would not be able to go back to it. Okay, so if you get to a module and you go through 3 or 4 and you can't do any of them, just hit submit and go to the next one. But if you do that, you can't go back. So the other thing I noticed as I was doing this is all these little things I want to remind you guys about so you know about it going in ahead of time. Here we are again. So it gives you an explanation of what you're doing here, but you don't have a step yet. You can go here and click on the steps, or you can click next. But after you complete a step, like let's go to this step, and now it wants me to click something because I clicked on that. Find all occurrences of profit. So find and replace. So let's go in here and go to replace and spell this correctly, profit. And let's go earnings. And let's replace all. And it was done and 2 replacements were made. I click OK. And then I can click close, and it will just sit here on that particular step. So the big thing with the MOS simulations, you have to move around and you have to navigate around and decide what you're going to do when. It doesn't move you forward even after you complete a step correctly, like I just did. You have to hit submit after you're done with each of the full modules, or if you choose not to do anything in the module and you want to move on. So I still have 5 steps left in this module, but if I hit submit, it will take me past that. They call them projects, not modules. Now I'm on to this one. Okay, now I cannot go back. All right, you can go previous back if you're in the steps within the module, but I can't get back to that. So you get as much done as you can, and it's not very long, guys. A lot of you will be able to get this done in about 15 minutes. But others may not make it to this part. So if you don't make it to part 2, it is what it is, and you're going to have to suck it up and deal with it. It's only because you weren't prepared for part 1. But if you know the steps in part 1, that case, according to the publishers, is only supposed to take an hour and 7 minutes. So in that sense, you should make it to part 2, and you would have lots of time to get it done. So once you finish everything and you hit submit on the last one, it would then submit for a mark. If you can't go any further and you've run out of time in the classroom lab, or you've run out of time online and you're testing online and you're out of time, you just hit the X and it will submit everything you've done up to that point. So I answered 7 questions. I skipped 10. Every one I answered, I got right. So that's cool. So I get points for that. And it gave me a score. I mean, your score won't publish at the end. Well, actually, I'll publish your score at the end. I think most of you will see that, but yeah, so that's my crash course on part 2. I know it's a bit different than what you're used to on the quizzes, which is why I wanted to show you everything in there. Once you're done with part 2, you're done. But again, you could very well go into part 2 and have a lot of time left and simply not be able to use it because you don't have any time left in the test window you were given. So to be very clear at the end, at our conclusion here, if you start, you're going to be given an hour and 50 minutes to complete this test. Some professors might round it up to 2 hours. You are going to obey your professor's guidelines in terms of how much time you have. If you start part 2 at an hour and 45 minutes, you will only have as much time to complete it as is going to be given in your test time. So you just have to hit submit when the time is up, and that's it. You aren't going to be able to trail it through. If you don't hit submit and your professor pulls the marks, you could very well get a 0 on part 2. So you need to watch that and be very careful. And that's it for part 2. Thanks for a great semester. Good luck on the test. Don't forget to go through the stuff in FOL. Don't forget to flip through the cases and practice your basic stuff. Make sure you know where everything is, and you should be good to go.